Howdy readers, I'm Jason, this is Chapter and Verse, and let me begin by apologizing for how long I've been away. I meant to make this video last Sunday night, but I've been dealing with some medical issues and have missed some work, and yeah, it's just been an ordeal. Not a major ordeal, but a minor ordeal. And but anyway, tonight is the first night that I'm actually feeling up to filming a video, and I'm doing it on my new iPad mini, so that's very exciting. It's got 4 times the memory of my old iPad mini. So this video is the latest in my Mortality series, right? You Carry a Coffin Today, and in which every month, or most months actually this year, I read a book and watch a film that deals with the subject of mortality. And you guys read along with me and watch the films with me, and we talk about them in the comments. And so right now, we're going to talk about the teen novel by Jesse Andrews, Me and Earl and the Dying Girl. And this was a book that I had not read before this. I've seen the film, which we're going to be watching for the end of the month. But this was my first time reading the novel, and I approached it with a little bit of trepidation because it seems to be, to say the least, not terribly well loved on BookTube. But I went into it with a lot of hope because I love the film so much, and the book did not disappoint me. I loved the novel. In fact, I thought it was one of the funniest things that I've ever read. There was one scene in particular that had me laughing so hard that, so Kelly was asleep, okay? Her parents were visiting us. They were in the guest bedroom. They were asleep. So I was out in the living room reading. And this one part late in the novel had me laughing so hard, but I was trying not to make any noise with my laughter. And so my whole body was shaking. And I couldn't stop laughing. I literally couldn't stop laughing. And the next morning, in bed, when Kelly and I woke up, I was telling her about this part, and you know, I was trying to be very quiet. We didn't want to wake up her parents in the next room, and I started laughing, and I just was trying to be quiet and keep it in, but like my whole body was shaking. I just couldn't stop laughing, and that made Kelly laugh really, really hard. And anyway. The book would be worth it for that scene alone, but as I hope to make clear, it's worth it for a lot of other reasons as well. So if you are new to this project of mine, the Mortality Project, I will link the announcement video to it in the description box below, and I will also link a couple other videos. So this project was inspired by the Scholar's Book Tag, which was created by Josh at Literary Gladiators. I will link his original tag video below and my take on his tag video. So, Me and Earl and the Dying Girl. What is this book about? It's pretty simple, really. There's a girl named Rachel, a high school girl, who is diagnosed with leukemia. There is Greg, who we see at the top here, who has known her since childhood, but they're not friends, right? They're acquaintances at best. And Greg's mother kind of railroads Greg into being available to Rachel if she needs someone to talk to or what have you, and Greg's none too happy about that. Earl is Greg's best friend and co-worker, and by co-worker I mean they make films together, and the films they make are right up my alley. So imagine a couple of teenage boys who love the Criterion Collection and want to make their own ridiculous versions of Criterion Collection films that they love, and you will have some idea of what Greg and Earl do with their filmmaking. But that's really the plot. So Greg resents his mother kind of railroading him into being there on some level for Rachel. And then Earl decides to share the films that they make with Rachel because Earl thinks that they might cheer her up. Well, Greg resents that because their films have always been kind of top secret and no one's ever been allowed to watch them. And so basically, I mean, the book on some level is a story about a teenage boy who is constantly kind of grousing about the fact that his life is not unfurling or unspooling in the way that he wants. And he's resentful of most everyone around him, including Rachel, the dying girl from the title. Greg resents that she needs him, or comes to need him, right? He makes her laugh. And so I've seen a lot of reviews of this book that really just rate the character of Greg over the coals as a callous, insensitive, selfish, solipsistic, kind of bullshit teenage boy. And part of me understands that, right? Because as you're reading this book, you're wanting him always to be less an asshole than he is. And he's really hardly ever less an asshole than he would have him be. But here's the thing, okay? So Greg being an asshole, right? It would be easy to dismiss him or to despise him were it not for a couple of things. One, this is how teenage boys are, okay? This book feels so true to the experience of being a teenage boy that the people out there who were like, oh, I really hope teenage boys aren't like this. I'm sorry to tell you, I'm sorry to burst that bubble, but they are. This is how teenage boys are. And the second thing is, this is not a book about chivalry in the face of death, okay? Greg is not that character. He's not a knight. This is a book that is very much so about the inadequacy we feel in the face of death. On page, page 42 in the hardcover of the novel, I felt like this really summed the book up, even just 42 pages in. It's at the beginning of chapter 6, which is called Phone Sex. And this is in Greg's voice. It says, I sat there, paralyzed by the problem of what to say. What can you possibly say to a dying person? So that's the thing. I mean, that is the book in a nutshell, right? That question, what can you possibly say to a dying person? That is a keenly observed and kind of disturbingly honest question. And it's also kind of oxymoronically a question that you can believe coming out of the mouth of a teenage boy. And the whole book really is kind of tacking along those lines, right? What help can any of us be to someone who's dying? This is a book that looks at dying, that looks at mortality through the lens that is the fear that it inspires in those of us who are on the periphery of it, right? The friends, the loved ones of the person who is sick. It is not so much about death as it is about how small and how insignificant and how just really not up to the task those of us who are there to provide comfort and provide solace and provide reassurance. It's about our failures to do that because those of us who are in that position, we do fail. Oftentimes we fail, especially when we're young, like Greg is, right? These are teenage characters. I wanted to share a story with you guys from my own youth. I think I was 18 years old, and there was a girl I was friends with. We weren't super close friends, but we were close enough friends. We were close enough friends that she felt comfortable having me in her house when she had tons of marijuana plants hanging up to dry in her bedroom. So I suppose that speaks to one thing. But one summer, the summer after we had become friends during the school year, she called me and wanted to meet me at a park and wanted to kind of talk with me, and so I drove out there and we talked, and she didn't seem to be telling me this because she wanted guidance or sympathy or a shoulder, etc., etc. But on the same level, I feel like I knew that she did need those things. But she shared with me that summer up in Montana, she had come to Cheyenne from Montana, that summer 3 of her friends had committed suicide. And I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to say to that. You know, we talked a little bit more. I don't remember how we kind of left it. But I think, you know, I think I assured her that I would be there for her. And I never called her again. I never talked to her again, and I never saw her again. She moved away shortly thereafter. And my whole life I have felt guilt over that. And the thing is, and I'm not trying to at all absolve myself of having failed her in some way, but I was really afraid. I mean, I was 18 years old, and I was so afraid of what she was telling me that I had no sense. I had no sense of what to do, what to say, what to think, what even under the best circumstances I could possibly do for her as a friend. And I just didn't feel up to the task. And I felt like a coward. Certainly, I was a coward. But, you know, but my 44-year-old self looks back at my 18-year-old self, and I can understand it, and I can forgive it. I can still feel the shame of it, but I can understand and forgive it. But yeah, I mean, I have faith that she made it through fine. She seemed all right when I was talking to her, but that was all me. That was all on me. It was absolute fear. And I think, frankly, that's what Greg is feeling in this book. He hides behind a kind of facade of wit and cleverness and hijinks on some level. But when you boil the story down to its kind of base parts, I think this is a book about a teenage boy who knows he needs to be there for this teenage girl who is dying, but he doesn't know how, and he doesn't believe that he is capable of it. And so that's what we're talking about here. That's what this is a novel about. So I suppose the point of this video is, in thinking about my own kind of life story that I shared, and the book itself, is I want to tell all of you watching that if you have someone in your life who is dying or who is suffering, who feels shattered or alone, or what have you, it is enough that you're present. It is enough that you're available to them. It is enough that you're sincere. And it is enough that you love them, that you allow yourself to love them. It is enough that you be generous with yourself, extravagantly generous. It's so important for us to really be unafraid of kind of giving of ourselves to people. And so if you can do those things, you're doing what you can. And that's the most important thing. I should have known that when I was a kid, when I was 18. I didn't. Greg learns that lesson much too late in this book, but he does learn that lesson. The ending of the novel is deeply moving after it was insanely hilarious, because that really funny ass scene comes near the end of the book. But in the end, I think that is the most important thing that one can say about this book, that it is brutally honest about learning lessons too late, about hindsight. And yeah, so read it if you haven't read it yet. And if you read it along with me, I can't wait to hear what you think in the comments. I know that Tilly and Roz read it, and it sounds like Tilly maybe preferred the book to the movie, and Roz preferred the movie to the book. We'll be discussing the movie later in the month. Until then, let's have a discussion in the comments below. And until then, I will see you guys again very soon. Adios.